What's good, y'all? And welcome to the second preseason preview video. In case you guys didn't know, I'm picking a bunch of different teams and just doing a deep dive on them. Here are the lists of all the teams. We already did the Knicks, so if you're interested in that video, make sure you go check that out on my channel. And I want to give a shout out to this guy right here who suggested doing the Nets. If you guys see your favorite team on that list right there, comment down below. I'll bump them up to the top of the list. But regardless, let's get back on topic of the Brooklyn Nets, who, of course, they started last season with KD and Kyrie. Obviously, they don't have either of those guys on their team anymore. They traded them at the trade deadline, got back Mikal Bridges and a few other pieces like that. Mikal really, broke out of his shell over there in Brooklyn. An incredible end to the season last year for him. Let's start off by looking at what they brought in this offseason. Now, with Brooklyn bringing in a few different pieces this offseason, the ones that I think that are going to mostly impact them are Lonnie Walker, Noah Clowney, Trendon Watford, and Dennis Smith Jr. Lonnie Walker's coming off a pretty solid season with the Lakers last year, averaging about 12 points per game for them. Noah Clowney was their first round draft pick coming out of Alabama this year. I think he can have a pretty good impact his rookie season. Former Summer League MVP Trendon Watford is still very young and can come in and give them some depth at the forward position. And then Dennis Smith Jr. resurging his career last season, coming in and giving them some good guard depth. When you look at the guys the Brooklyn Nets brought in this offseason, they got way younger as a team. And the best part about it is they didn't just get guys that are, going to be shaky at first and then can progress throughout. Don't get me wrong, these guys can, progress into bigger and better things throughout their career. But they also, I think, all except for maybe Dennis Smith Jr. are going to be in the rotation regularly. But even with Dennis Smith Jr., I could see a possibility where he carves himself out some minutes for the Brooklyn Nets to be, a regular rotational piece for them. And I know none of these guys are anything crazy that are going to, really shake up your roster. But when you compare it to the guys that they lost last season, they definitely have a direction that they're going in. The Nets let go of a lot of their veteran role players, obviously without having KD and Kyrie now. They aren't a top-tier contending team anymore. They lost guys like Yuta Watanabe and Seth Curry to free agency while trading away the contracts of Joe Harris and Patty Mills. Again, with the majority of these guys aging, you could definitely see the direction they wanted to go this offseason. I do think that letting those guys go was a smart decision for the Brooklyn Nets. I wish they did keep Yuta Watanabe, though. I really like his shooting that he could have brought to this roster. He's got great length and everything, too. Still on the younger side. I think they could have, held him on this roster, but it seemed like he was pretty set in stone to go meet back up with KD in Phoenix. And then with Patty Mills, Seth Curry, and Joe Harris, I get it. You got to push the youth movement, get some younger guys, some PT, because now you're at a different spot as a roster that you were when you signed these players. The one thing that I definitely think the Nets are going to miss this season, though, by losing out on all these guys, 3 out of those 4 were 40% or above three-point shooters, and then Patty Mills was the only guy that was under 40%, and he still shot 37%. You're missing out on a lot of shooting with just those 4 players missing, and again, they didn't really replace them with shooters either. They're going to have a lack of shooting on this roster for sure. And now that we've seen all the moves, let's take a look at what this Brooklyn Nets team could potentially look like this season. The starting lineup is staying the same as it was post-trade deadline last season. There's a lot of length in this starting lineup, with their shortest guy being Spencer Dinwiddie at 6'5". Then you got Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Nick Claxton holding it down low. Then off the bench, we got point guard Ben Simmons, Lonnie Walker, Royce O'Neal, Trendon Watford, and Noah Clowney. Now, when I was making this video, I was very tempted to put Ben Simmons as their starting point guard, and if that's the case, then the length is incredible. The versatility, defensively at least, is incredible on that lineup. Just a lot of big bodies, super long arms. I like the idea of it. The idea of it is nice. But also, I can't keep getting trapped up in this loop of Ben Simmons hyping himself up in the offseason and then nothing really happens in the regular season. Not too long ago, he had an interview with Mark Spears. If you hadn't read it, I definitely recommend it if you're a Ben Simmons fan or a Nets fan. It's got some good little, tidbits here and there. But one of the parts that I found most interesting was he was talking about how he talked to Coach Vaughn and was saying how his main position is point guard. Philly tried to put him at that point forward. That's not really him. He is a point guard. He's got holes in his game, he knows, but he is a point guard. That's his main solid thing. And when he's just saying that, yeah, I agree with him. He is a point guard. He is arguably the best playmaker on this Nets roster right now. It makes sense that he is a point guard and that he plays as a point guard. But where I kind of get caught up a little bit is when he says that he is going to return to his all-star level, that he is 100% as healthy as he ever has been. He's ready to go back and go crazy. Now listen, Ben, I am a fan of you, man. I do like Ben Simmons as a player. He's really cool. I like his play style of playmaking first, the defense, just getting out in transition, running quick, fast pace. Everything about that I like. But then again, last offseason, we did the same thing. You were on the JJ Redick podcast. I remember listening to that podcast, and I was like, yo, Ben Simmons is he's going to come out. He's going to be killing it. I remember I was talking to my friend who's a Nets fan. He was hyped up. I was kind of hyping him up too. And then Ben Simmons comes in, and he's not really anything like he was saying he was. So that's why I stuck him at that backup point guard position. Obviously, if he comes back and he's playing at his all-star level like he once was, they'll put him in the starting lineup, no issue. But for right now, we're going to keep him as that backup. That's mainly why I really do like the Dennis Smith Jr. signing, because I think they signed him as kind of Ben Simmons' insurance, where he can come in and be that backup point guard. Obviously, they have their differences, but they also are pretty similar. Both struggle to score. Both are defensive-minded. Both are pretty good playmakers as well. You know, obviously, Ben Simmons is 6'10". Dennis Smith Jr. is, 6'2". There's differences between them, but their play style is very similar. I could see where Ben Simmons is still struggling with his injuries or not really able to stay on the court or be productive on the court. They just kind of push Dennis Smith Jr. back in there and get a lot of the same attributes that they would get from Ben Simmons. And then I also really do like the Lonnie Walker signing, coming off of a pretty good year with the Lakers last year, coming off their bench, being a little spark plug here and there. I think he can really do that same thing for this Brooklyn Nets team that is kind of struggling with self-creators. They obviously have Mikal Bridges as their main guy. Spencer Dinwiddie can create for himself. Beyond that, it's kind of like So Lonnie Walker coming in off that bench, being that spark plug, running the offense for that second unit, I really do like. But now it's time to talk about what this Brooklyn Nets team is going to hang their hat on, and that is defense. This Brooklyn Nets team has a lot of guys with great size and great length for their position, great defensive instincts, and just all around great defenders. And don't get me wrong, I know there's more to defense than just steals and blocks, but not many teams have 7 guys that are of this caliber of defenders. They have 5 guys almost averaging a full steal per game, and 3 of which actually are doing it. If you take those 7 players right there and add up all their steals per game, add up all their blocks per game, they average 6.8 steals per game and 6.1 blocks per game. Not only do you have guys like Mikal Bridges, who's an all-defensive team member, Ben Simmons, obviously he was an all-defensive team member, not really playing to his par, but like I said before, he said that he's playing, up to the healthiest he's been. Maybe he can be back up onto that. Nick Claxton, I think if KD and Kyrie didn't get traded at the deadline, he would have made an all-defensive team last year. He was in Defensive Player of the Year talks at one point last season. Then add on Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal, who have made an entire career out of playing defense for them. Yeah, they're pretty good. Noah Clowney, their rookie too, he's shown flashes that he could be a really good versatile defender, holding it down low at that big position. And with how good defensively they're going to be playing and how a high energy a lot of their guys play, I can see that easily translating into them getting out in transition, getting easy buckets. But they got super athletic bigs. They got younger, like I said before, and young guys always, can get that second wind going and just get out there and sprint, get those easy buckets. They're going to need to get out in transition though, because I could definitely see their offense struggling a decent amount. Now again, same thing with the steals and blocks thing. I know there's more to playmaking than just strictly assists per game, but when you look at these numbers, it's pretty staggering. Now, I've never looked at Spencer Dinwiddie as a true playmaker, but in the 26 games that he played with them since getting traded there, he averaged a whopping 9 assists per game. And even with the struggles of staying on the court, Ben Simmons still averaged a calm 6 assists per game from there. There's a pretty steep drop-off after that to Royce O'Neal at 3.7. And then with the rest of the guys, you can pretty much chop up those assist numbers to just ball movement and just the flow of the game. Now, if Spencer Dinwiddie can keep up that 9 assists per game that he did at the second half of last season, you could say that I'm wrong. I'll say it myself. I am wrong. The Nets don't have a playmaking problem. But, like I said, I've never really looked at him as a playmaker first guy. He's really more of a score first guy, so I don't expect that to stay up. Again, Ben Simmons, he's saying his thing. That's pretty much all up in the air. I don't know how to feel about that. Then beyond that, their best playmaker is Royce O'Neal. As a Knicks fan, I know the struggles of not having a competent point guard on your roster, and also now with Jalen Brunson coming over, I know what it's like to have a competent point guard on your roster and how much that elevates your team as a whole. I could definitely see that this Brooklyn Nets team really having some stagnant offenses with not having a good playmaker to set up them into their offense. Not only just a lack of playmakers, though, I also alluded to this a little bit earlier. They don't really have many self-creators on the roster. Again, Spencer Dinwiddie, I will give him that. He is a self-creator. Mikal Bridges has shown last season that he can self-create for himself. The Lonnie Walker signing, again, like I said, is a very good signing for me. But beyond that, I mean, who are you looking for? Cam Johnson to really create offense for himself? Again, he can, but how good, at what level can he do it? I don't really know. And then on top of that, the three-point shooting is kind of questionable. If you look at the stats last season, the only guys on their roster that shoot above 35% from three is Royce O'Neal, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Lonnie Walker. And I know Noah Clowney projects to be a good shooter in the future. I think he shot about 28% from three in college last year on 3 attempts per game. His shooting form looks good, and sometimes he gets hot and can shoot, a few in a row. But I don't expect him to come out and shoot, well at all for the Nets next season. If you have Nick Claxton on the floor with Ben Simmons, that can really muck up a lot of space in there too. Dorian Finney-Smith's coming off of a down year shooting. I can really see this Brooklyn Nets team struggling heavily on offense. And with that being said, it's time to do the ceiling and the floor for this Brooklyn Nets team. We're going to start off with the good news, the ceiling. As a ceiling, I have this Brooklyn Nets team being an 8th seed in the play-in. In this scenario, Mikal Bridges picks up where he left off last season and averages a calm 25 plus per game, plays at an all-star level. I'm saying all-star level because now with how much talent's in the NBA, I feel like you can't really call anyone an all-star. Nick Claxton also continues his all-defensive team campaign from last season, anchoring down one of the best defenses in the league. And I do have them winning the play-in tournament, whether that's the 7th seed or the 8th seed, doesn't really matter because either way I have them losing in the first round. And for the floor, I have them as the 11th seed, missing the play-in tournament and being in the draft lottery. In this scenario, I have teams really just honing in on Mikal Bridges. They know that he's going to be their number one guy. They know what to expect this season, and he has some struggles, not really having many other self-creators around him, as I mentioned before. I do think their defense is going to be good regardless, holding teams to that 105, 110 range. But I do think that their offense is going to struggle and, they're going to be scoring in that, 105, 110 range. So it kind of makes it hard for them to really pull out those wins. Let me know what you guys think of the Brooklyn Nets. Where do you expect them to rank? There's a lot of really good teams out here in the East, so it's really difficult. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Again, if you see your team on this list, make sure to comment down below. I'll make sure that I get that video out as soon as possible for you guys. We already did the Knicks, so if you missed that one, make sure you check that out. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch ya.